All right, it looks like we are live. So as people kind of trickle in here before we get into the good stuff, I guess I'll give a little bit of a background about Sketch. I'm Dan Gower. This is Ryan Jensen. We're here at Sketch Development Services in Webster Groves, the Webster Groves neighborhood of St. Louis, Missouri. We deliver consulting, cloud services, and software development services, as well as Atlassian tooling services. And we're primarily focused on lean DevOps and agile product management, all while focusing also on the human behind the screen. So we're kind of on a mission to transform complexity into creativity, whether you need custom software, strategic consulting, cloud help. We want to deliver pragmatic solutions that allow your teams to work smarter and faster. Uh, that's kind of what we're about. You can find out more about who we are and the services that we provide by visiting us at sketchdev.io. We're also an AWS partner, which is what brings us to today's topic, finding your innovation budget in the cloud spend. So, what is the innovation budget really? I guess we do these big planning sessions in December and we set our budget for the year ahead, and then inevitably things change. So you have new ideas, but we've already budgeted most of our available money. So you kind of get this question of how do we find the funds to try all these new ideas we just had without stealing from all the things we already budgeted for? And that's why I'm here with our very own Ryan Jensen, who I like to call the Cloud King. He is a self-described tightwad, and he's also one of the top 200 cloud engineers in the whole world, at least by one metric that I can think of. So that makes him pretty great at cutting every wasteful dollar out of your cloud spend and getting you more money that you can put into something else. So before we get into it, will you tell us a little bit about how you got so interested in cloud cost optimization?
Absolutely. So, thanks for the introduction, Dan. I'd say part of what got me really involved with cloud cost optimizations was when I started. Back in 2009, I was dabbling with AWS and just getting to learn all the services that it offered. And at the time, I was working for a company that they weren't as interested in it as I was. So a lot of what I had to do was on my own dime. And as such, people who are using the cloud today, you probably already know that it's possible for costs to get out of control. And when you're doing it with your own personal pocketbook, yeah, you got to be very careful and mindful of the things you're doing. So, starting back then, when I first got involved with any kind of cloud computing, I was always very mindful of what things cost, how to avoid certain costs, how to make sure I'm shutting things down and mitigating the spend that was going to end up on my own credit card.
Nice. So you can't just throw the corporate card around. You've got to be cost conscious.
In that case, no, I did not have the corporate card, no.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, so will you tell us also if a company's already in the cloud, do they already save money just by being in the cloud?
That's a great question because that's one of the things that usually gets thrown out there in cloud sales and marketing materials. It's move to the cloud, you're going to save money. And you often hear lots of people abandoning the cloud migrations that they've done because they're not saving money. That typically happens because they're treating the cloud environment like a normal on-prem data center. There's different things that you need to do, different levers to pull, different ways to architect your environment so that you're making the most of every dollar you spend inside the cloud. If you do treat it like a normal data center, if it's cheaper than your on-prem environment, I mean, lucky you, that's probably a complete accident. It's probably possible in a couple of cases, but generally speaking, that's where you're not going to see hardly any savings at all. The savings really come from fine-tuning your environment, setting up auto scaling so that your servers are more elastic as demand increases and decreases. So things of that nature will help you maximize the dollars that you're spending in the cloud. But just the fact of being in the cloud is not enough for you to tell your boss, hey, we're saving money now.
Got it. So moving to the cloud is kind of like a means to an end. If you just treat it as the end and you say like, okay, we're in the cloud, now we'll do the same thing we've always done, you're not really gonna get the benefits.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. So when you do want to make sure that you're taking advantage of all the cost efficiency potential, once you do move to the cloud, how do you go about creating a cloud cost savings plan?
That's a very loaded question, I'd say. There's a lot involved with getting the cost savings plan for anybody up and running. And no two clients are usually the same, so there's different things that you have to look for. Um, some of the main things that we do when we get involved with the client is making sure that they've got adequate savings commitments on their account. So things like reserved instances or savings plans. But before you do that, even, it's always worthwhile to take a look at the environment and make sure that you have not over provisioned any instances or over provisioned your servers, that things are right sized. Um, and then another thing we can do is look at the overall architecture. Again, like I was saying earlier, if you treat the cloud environment like you would an on-prem data center, and this is maybe for the more software development mindset people, it's easy to just build your code one way and deploy it on a server and be done with it. But there can be savings that can be had by leveraging different managed services, cloud native services that any of the big cloud providers offer, like AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud. If you use some of those managed services and just change a little bit of how you're doing some of your software development, that too can help maximize your savings because maybe you don't need as large of servers running your stuff if you're breaking off these pieces into other areas where you're using platform services rather than actual server compute that you might normally do from a traditional development mindset.
Okay. So you said a few things there. One of the things that I heard was about like over provisioning versus right sizing. Can you talk a little bit more about what that means and how you know if you're doing it right?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot of cloud native tools that will help you monitor and track the utilization of the environment that you've got. So if we're talking AWS and you've got servers running in EC2, there's a service called CloudWatch, and inside there are metrics that show you how much CPU you're using and where it spikes and like what days might be hotter than others. Same thing, you can add custom metrics in there for tracking memory utilization, or if you're using other services like RDS for your database or ECS for running containers within the cloud, they have similar metrics within CloudWatch as well for you to track those things. So over provisioning would be a scenario where if you've got a small little blog and you're hoping that the whole world's looking at it, but actually it's just your parents and your grandparents looking at it saying, great job, Dan. You've got 4 users looking at your blog. So last thing you want to do is have a giant beast of a server running that blog where you're throwing away that money because the cloud provider is going to charge you for the resources you provision. So if you've got this server ready to take on the entire world to look at your blog post, but you only have those 4 people looking at it, that's an instance of over provisioning. That's a case where you're throwing dollars away that don't need to be, where you could shrink that server size down to something that's more appropriate. So as an AWS partner and an Azure partner, we have access to a bunch of other tools that aren't generally available to the public. This is partner level tools that help you get in there and get a more in-depth look at certain things. So that's one of the things that we would help look at. So if you're just using the cloud native thing, like I was saying, if you go look at CloudWatch and take a look at the metrics there, it's a little trickier for you to correlate all the data and figure out, well, what days were the hottest and where did we have some peaks and how do we know if we're truly over provision or not? But the tools that we have can track that over months and months of time and give you a really fine-tuned picture of, well, this time of year is hotter than these other times of year, or this week is the hottest week out of every single month. So we can look at this historically or even in a short-term time window so that we can help you better ascertain what your true compute needs are, and then we can right size that to make sure that the server that's running your code is the most appropriate one for that scenario.
That makes sense. So going back to that same example, say that my grandparents are reading my blog. They tell everybody else at the retirement community about how great my blog is. And suddenly overnight, I've got just like millions of octogenarians that are reading my blog. And I right sized it already for my 4-person readership.
Yep.
Is that where reserved instances come in? How do I make sure that I'm ready to accept more traffic if it comes?
Gotcha. So that's a very good question. Reserved instances, that's sort of a different topic, but um, so talking about the influx of viewership into your blog. So this is a great scenario where leveraging auto scaling is going to help you maximize your cost. So this is going to sound very, very, very counterintuitive, but I've got a great picture of this. Maybe we can share this with the webinar for everybody who's attending here. But it is a scenario. It's a valid scenario for where if you throw 70 servers at a workload, that might actually be cheaper than throwing 30 servers at a workload. And I know that sounds crazy and sort of mind-blowing, but this picture is worth a million words. So I'll make sure we include this with the webinar here. But it helps you more finely and granularly follow the demand curve of the usages there. So as your usage starts to go up, as the millions of octogenarians are jumping on your blog, it'll follow that curve more closely than if you have giant servers that it's more
Hmm.
blocky. And this picture is going to help explain that more. But that's one of the things we can help do is so the right sizing, it's not just the auto scaling, it's not just finding what the minimum single server could be, because maybe you want to throw 5 servers that are even smaller than what the minimum could be, but those 5 added up will meet that demand of just your parents and grandparents being on it. But then as you throw more and more of these little microscopic servers at your workload, it can help get you a better fit to your usage curve, which can save you a whole lot more money. And that's one of the things that we can help look at, both in terms of right sizing, but also the elasticity and scaling of things. But you did also mention reserved instances. And that's it's a great thing you can do that will help minimize your cost while making a commitment to your cloud provider, whether it's Google, Azure, or AWS. So when you purchase reserved instances, it's more of a billing notion than it is a hardware or infrastructure notion. So what's really great about that is without changing any of your code, without changing your architecture, it's really just a billing mechanism that you go to your cloud provider and say, okay, I want cheaper prices than what I have now. Sign me up for a year, sign me up for 3 years. And again, speaking of us being a partner, we've got access to some reserved instances that are 30-day reserved instances. So that's something that's not normally available to the public either. So that's an area where we can help clients who have fluctuating workloads, like around the holiday season in November and December, Black Friday sales. If those explode and you need a lot of servers to run your application, your e-commerce website during that time, but you don't want to buy a full 1 year commitment for the reserved instances. If you just want the 30-day reserved instance, that's something that we as an AWS partner and Azure partner can help provide to people.
Cool. So I'm hearing like on the first part there, it's one of those like many hands makes light work kind of
Yes.
situations. And
Yeah.
then as far as reserved instances, it's almost like buying in bulk where you're like kind of committing to future spend in return for a discount. But you can do 30-day reserved instances to kind of minimize your upfront commitment and still get the benefit of a lower price.
Yeah. And furthermore, so different partners that are also classified as cloud resellers. So again, Sketch, we are an AWS reseller and we can help facilitate this. We also have a partner who's an Azure reseller, so we've got that same way for both those clouds. Um, because resellers go through a distributor, the distributor can buy reserved instances in bulk. So they are buying the reserved instances, like thousands upon thousands of them per month. And because of that, they get an even deeper discount than if a standard client would go out and purchase a reserved instance themselves. So the savings compound because of that through going through a reseller, and we can offer clients an even bigger discount if they were to go through us as a reseller rather than just buying off-the-shelf reserved instances through the cloud provider.
So we're like Costco adjacent, but for the cloud.
Yes, that's a great phrase for it. Yes,
Okay.
I like
All
that.
right. Now it's in a language I can understand.
Yeah, yeah. You make sure you trademark that.
Yeah. Okay. So you threw a lot at us there.
Yeah.
And let's just pretend, of course, I know what that all means, but let's pretend for the sake of the webinar that I don't know what half of that stuff means.
Okay.
How can you make it more real for me? Like what are the action items that I need to put on my to-do list to make sure that I'm saving money on the cloud?
So step one for sure is look at the cost savings and reserved instance recommendations provided through your cloud provider. There is a tool within, if you go into your account and you go to the billing area, over on the left-hand navigation, you'll see an option for like recommendations, both for reserved instances and savings plans. And it's a really good start for showing you, given the servers that you have running in the environment, here's some things that you could purchase in terms of those commitments, whether it's the reserved instances or the savings plans. And when you purchase that, you'll see some savings up front, and that's great. That's definitely a good start. Like I was saying earlier with the right sizing, it's a little trickier if you're using the cloud native tools. So in that case, finding a partner who has access to a different set of tools that could come help you look at your workloads and better fine tune what the right sizing and make sure nothing's over provisioned, we can come in and help you with that. If you can do that on your own, I always recommend doing that before you buy the reserved instances or savings plans because those are long-term commitments, generally speaking. So last thing you want to do is buy a whole lot of committed 1 year or 3 year plans, savings plans that you're purchasing that for a server that's way too big. So you've already committed yourself for this thing that's not being fully utilized, and then it's a bit of a hassle to undo that. There are ways that it's a little easier if you end up buying reserved instances that you decide you don't need. You can typically throw those back in the marketplace, sort of like a wholesale garage sale, that maybe other people want it and they might get it for a discounted rate. That helps wash your hands of that commitment that you made. But you can't usually do that with databases. So be very cautious with purchasing reserved instances for databases if you're not really sure what you're doing.
Okay. So there might be a situation where if you buy too many reserved instances, you can almost like sublease them to kind of recoup
Yes.
some of your costs, but
Yep.
not always.
Correct.
Got
Correct.
it. Got it. Got
Yep.
it. Okay. Um, so you mentioned that Sketch can kind of do these cloud cost audits and that we will help people kind of come up with a cloud cost optimization plan for free. But when a company offers me something for free, I tend to get a little bit fidgety.
Okay.
So what's the catch? Like, what is it? Are you trapping people with the fine print and then you're stealing their souls? Like, what is the deal?
No, so at Sketch, we love being very upfront, open, and honest with our clients. And so there's benefit in it for us by helping other clients out save money. Um, For one, it gets us a little more clout with the partnerships that we have with the cloud providers because they see us working with more and more like different clients, and that helps them throw more work our way and recommend us. So it doesn't cost you anything for that, but it does help us in that endeavor. The other thing is a lot of the savings that we offer the clients as we go through this, like I was mentioning earlier, we get the reserved instances and savings plans through distributors. So there's a huge discount. And for all intents and purposes, let's just say that we keep 1 or 2% of that savings and pass the rest of it on to the clients. So in the end, us saving you money helps save us money. So it's in our best interest to save you as much as possible because there's a little bit of like a profit sharing, so to speak, or a savings sharing. So we save in the savings, but because of that, we're not charging you anything upfront for it. So this is all free of charge in most cases. Depending on your scenario, if you're in a GovCloud space, that is a little trickier. We don't have all the levers that we can pull, so there might be a cost associated there, but we'll definitely talk about that. But 9 times out of 10, it's free for anybody that wants to have the initial cost assessment is always 100% free. But then once we get engaged with you and try and find out where and how we can save you money, as we start making that happen, that's generally 9 times out of 10 free to you.
Got it. So you're kind of betting on yourself then, where it's like, if someone comes to you and they ask you to take a look at their cloud costs and you don't find any opportunities to save them money, then you gave them a little bit of your time for free, and they basically get a free consultation and some validation that they're doing all the right things and saving as much money as possible. But then if you can save them money, then you take like a small commission off the top of that, basically, and say that they save money, and that's how Sketch would make money in that situation.
Yes, yeah, I think you clarified that pretty well. Yeah.
Okay. Um, you mentioned also having some visibility tools that go beyond what's native in some of these clouds. Can you talk a little bit about what you can see that people can't see just by looking on their own?
Yeah, so I was mentioning earlier part of the tool that we have, it does show a heat map of different servers that you've got. And that's where it'll show you what days of the week, what weeks of the month, what months out of the year are some of your servers most heavily utilized. And that really helps you fine tune um, where things are in terms of right sizing. So I think that tool just by itself is worth its weight in gold because right sizing is, like I was saying earlier, I always swear by it being the first step towards right sizing, or first step towards purchasing reserved instances. You want to right size first, then go to your reserved instances. You're going to save money off the bat just for right sizing alone, even if you're still paying on-demand rates to the cloud provider. But once it's right sized, you've set yourself up for indefinitely for the future to have that workload being right where it should be, having the appropriate amount of CPU and memory running your workload. But then it's also making sure you're not wasting money on buying too large of a reserved instance or overcommitting to those things. So our tools are great at doing that kind of thing. We also have tools that help facilitate tagging your instances. So if you work for a large enterprise or organization where there's many, many different departments and each department maybe has their own budget, but you've got one centralized infrastructure team that gets the overall cloud bill, but they have to figure out how do we charge back these other departments within the company. This tool that we have can help tag your instances even after the fact. But what's really nice is it will tag them in your cloud environment. It's native cloud resource tagging. Um, so that's a huge win because people that are running reports, or if you have different reporting tools that you're already using, um, as you're trying to segment those reports, this tagging tool will it finds its way, like the results of it find its way into those reports because it's fixing tags where maybe you've got one team where they misspelled application as the tag name. They flip-flop the I and the O or something. That happens to me all the time if I'm typing too fast. But this tool will go in and fix those things. And so that way, as the report's being generated, and if the report's looking for the application tag spelled correctly, it helps it helps you with that. So great tool for tagging, for right sizing, and also making some recommendations for which reserved instances to purchase and or savings plans.
So it sounds like it kind of does a lot of the work where like a finance professional or like someone in operations maybe could understand what's going on there and see opportunities to save money even if they don't have any kind of like cloud engineering knowledge.
Yeah, so it's great that you mentioned financial and operations. So what we do have a tool that's actually FinOps certified. And it's great for people that aren't maybe necessarily technically minded, but they're more in tune with budgets and just running the overall cost of cloud computing. So because cloud spend can generally fluctuate from month to month, it's hard to predict that. But this FinOps tool that we have it's got some built-in AI into it that can forecast a little more accurately than some of its competitors what your cloud spend might be for the next 6 months. So it's really good at figuring out just based on past utilizations and comparing it to other trends in the market. It can predict where your cost might be next month, the month after. So it's great to help financial people within your organization figure out and budget for what that cloud spend might be.
Got it. And so I've kind of talked to people about this before. Obviously, I don't understand it at the level that you do, but everybody understands saving money and knows that that's a good thing. So I've talked to people and they've been kind of excited, and then they've gone back and they've maybe talked to their own IT team or to someone else, and they've said, "Well, we don't really want anyone else in our cloud right now. Like we don't want to have anyone else messing with it. We don't want to lose access or control. How invasive is it to get these tools in there?
That's a great question. I've heard this a lot too. So if you decide that you want some of the tools that I was talking about monitoring your environment, all of them have read-only access to the environment. So they aren't making any changes. And there's ways that we can lift up the hood and show you under the covers what's going on. So we can prove and you can confirm that it is read-only access, that it's not doing things that you wouldn't expect it to do. But beyond that, in terms of some of these cost savings opportunities that we have, like I was saying earlier, so if you're buying reserved instances, it's not an infrastructure thing, it's not a development thing, it's really just a weird billing lever inside the cloud environment. So similar to that, all these the automated purchasing and selling of these reserved instances that we can do as a reseller, that all happens without us having admin hooks inside your environment. Like the environment's still yours, the servers are still yours, you have full control and access to those servers. It's really all just a lot of billing smoke and mirrors that takes place to get in place inside that cloud provider so that when it comes time for the billing at the end of the month, the cloud provider is giving you the discounts that come with those different savings plans and reserved instance commitments that we're making.
Got it.
So it's hands off of your environment other than the billing aspect of it.
Okay. And then you mentioned a couple things in there too, like also architecture and development. So does the way that you're developing your software make a difference in the cloud, or is it
Yes.
more about the architecture?
No, I'd say software development does play a big part in this too. So, like I was saying at the beginning of this podcast, if people are treating the cloud environment like they would a normal on-prem, which includes developers, you might not be saving the dollars that you should be. In fact, we have an example of a nonprofit organization that in Tennessee that we just helped recently. Um, we ended up saving them 75% of their existing cloud spend. They were already in AWS. We kept them in AWS. We worked our magic, and a big part of that came from our top-notch software developers that we have here at Sketch, going into the application, fine-tuning some things, offloading some of the work that it was doing into other cloud managed services. So we could shrink the server size. And again, back to the over provisioning, make sure that that server size was as tight as it could be. And so by offloading some of those bits and pieces from a development standpoint, that really helped us save that client more money with their cloud spend. So not just pulling bits and pieces out, but our developers are great in all kinds of different programming languages. And Rust is a great one right now in terms of being very memory and CPU efficient, which helps facilitate shrinking that server size down so you're not over provisioned on things. So yeah, having a top-notch dev team really helps save money too.
Okay, so there's like cloud engineering and things you can do there with architecture and everything else, but there's also just from a normal software development standpoint, you're trying to make choices that make your applications less demanding on resources.
Yes, yeah, because if you've got a really chatty application or an application that's just, and I know I was guilty of it many years ago too. Like once memory got so cheap, it's like, oh, I don't need to worry about, quick sort. I just do whatever kind of sort I want and just, throw caution to the wind and build it however you want. But in the cloud world, you're paying for those resources. So at that point, you need to be a little more mindful, and maybe it is time to go back to those low-level computing algorithm classes that they teach in college, and take those to heart and be very mindful of the things you're doing. That'll make sure that your memory footprint and CPU footprint are really small, which helps save money as well.
Okay, and I'm backtracking a little bit now. So you mentioned that Sketch helped save a client 75%, like just knock it right off their cloud bill. What do they have to give up for that? Like, what's the trade-off?
Nothing. They're stoked. The application's more performant. The application's running smoother. They had a couple outages here and there, which I think is part of why they were reaching out to find somebody to help fix this thing. So it's part of it's being more performant that I guess anyone out there watching this can also take as a to-do item for yourselves is if you look up Jamstack, it's sort of a notion of how you deploy React apps or Vue apps or Svelte apps. So all these kind of single page application type environments. Um, what you can do with that is instead of having a normal web server host that application for the end users, so your blog would be a great example. So for your grandparents to get to it, rather than it running on a server, like a normal server, so to speak, um, it's hosted just on an S3 bucket, which is object storage that costs a penny a month to have your blog code out there. And then you've got CloudFront as being the primary web server, which costs a little less than a penny per month to just serve that out until you get those millions of those octogenarians out for your blog. At that point, the CloudFront cost might go up to, $1 a month. But that's far cheaper and faster and more efficient and secure than having it running on a server. So that's one of the things that we help do a lot of times. Anytime we see some of these more common, React, Vue, Angular, all those kind of things, we will try and change the deployment mechanism so that it's doing this very efficient, scalable, and cost savings manner.
Okay. That was going to be my next question. You mentioned security. And normally when I think about getting like the kind of like the value option or the more cost-friendly option in a lot of areas of life, like it seems like there's almost always some sort of trade-off. And then I think about the kinds of clients that we help, and they're in, finance, healthcare, public sector, all these really tightly regulated industries where the cost of a security breach is so high that it seems like there's like no risk tolerance, and they never would want to save a buck or two at the expense of their security.
Yeah, I would definitely say we at Sketch are pretty security mindful. We have so one of the things that we do, we're great at infrastructure as code, and we've got some infrastructure as code modules that deploy a web application firewall into clients' environments. And that will help protect them in terms of things like OWASP top 10, uh, just general hacking scripts that are out there, bots, any kind of malicious things of those natures. So getting a WAF installed into the environment is one of the things that we can often help with. But then back to some of the toolings that we're talking about and the cost savings. Um, Security usually doesn't come for free. So costs can and will go up depending on some of the security things that you might deploy in your environment. But at the end of the day, like you're saying, the last thing anybody wants is to be on the front page of the Wall Street Journal saying, we got hacked and 20 million subscribers have their personal data out on the internet. That's far more expensive managing and dealing with that than it is to have some of these security features installed. Um, so our cost optimization things don't generally look at some of the security tools that are out there because a lot of the cloud providers don't offer discounts on them. I think that's how they ensure that they're still getting their money because they hate people like me who are constantly saving them money or saving clients money, which is costing the cloud providers money. So those security ones are usually where there's a little higher price point with a lot of those things.
Makes sense. Um, okay. That's all good stuff. So if someone wants to get deeper into this or they have specific questions they want to ask you, they want to hear more examples of things that you can do, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
I'd say they could find us on our website. You mentioned it earlier, sketchdev.io. We've got a cloud service page off the top navigation on there. You can contact us through the websites is probably a great way to do it. And we will be happy to set up a 30-minute quick chat with you to figure out what your current environment generally looks like, how we might be able to help, and then we can get into the talks of doing a free assessment for anybody. And that free assessment, it takes an hour max for you to, we'll just sign a non-disclosure agreement between each other. we'll get some of your billing information that will, it gives us a great picture of what your current spend is, how many servers you got out there, what kinds of current savings plans you might already have. And then we feed that into our engine, and then it spits out this great report that we'll look at. We'll fine tune some things, and then we'll provide you with a report at the end where we can say, hey, this is what we can save you. If it's a lot, which it usually is, then hopefully you'll want to sign an agreement with us, and we'll do it for real. We'll make sure that those savings take place. Or in the weird chance that you're the best cost saver in the world, and after we run our report, if it's not showing any savings, there's no skin in the game for you, no real obligation, cost, or other.
So basically, in that case, you just took an hour of your time and you confirmed that you're doing what you need to be doing.
Yeah, yeah. So it might be just a good little health wellness check for your
Okay,
cloud environment, for your cloud spend.
good stuff. Well, before we get out of here, should we look at the webinar and see if anybody sent in any questions for us?
It's a great idea. Let's do that. See if I take a look at my chat. Let's see. Um, see, I got a question here. It says, how do I know if my software team is developing in a way that's keeping our cloud spend down? Does AI coding solve this problem now? So we touched on this a little bit earlier. So I think this is a great question. You're asking, Dan, like, is it just an architecture thing or an infrastructure thing that saves money? No, it's definitely also how you're building the software, like I was talking about earlier. So AI might be able to help with that now that you've heard some of the advice that I've given you. Like if you ask it, look at my code, what are some things that I could pull out to use cloud native services? Like AI might be able to help with that. I would wager a guess here that AI, if you don't specifically ask it to write the code in a cost-saving manner, it probably won't. It's probably going to do regurgitate a lot of the code that it's got from other blogs and tutorials, which not bad, but like here's how you program this, here's how you do a for loop. So it's going to do that standard for loop code, kind of trivial little example there, but it's going to use the trivial examples as it's building what you ask it to do. So it's not going to necessarily be mindful of, oh, maybe I should use a different messaging service that the cloud offers instead of building that into the code and doing that in some asynchronous manner. So you could maybe give it a shot with AI, but in the end, I think having some of Sketch's developers maybe take a look and do an assessment for you, that could be a huge win instead of just relying on AI.
Makes sense. I mean, I feel like AI is kind of just trained on what's out there, so it makes sense that the outputs from it would just be super average.
Yep. Yep. Very true. It's probably going to fall back on the standard of an on-prem environment. Here's some servers. We just need to write code that does this task, and that's how AI is probably going to generate the code in that manner, rather than be a little more broad-minded of knowing, well, there's these other services that could do this type of thing. So yes, what it wrote in terms of code isn't bad, it's not wrong, it's going to get the functionality you're asking for, but it might not do it in a secure manner, it might not do it in a cost-efficient manner. And that's where having just any human take a look at it could probably help, but especially having one of the top-notch Sketch developers look at it.
Nice.
Yeah.
Cool. And we've got another question coming in now. It looks like someone says GCP, that's Google Cloud, right?
Yeah.
I'm on GCP. Can you help?
Yes, great question. So I know I've talked a lot more probably about AWS and Azure because we are a partner of both those cloud providers. We're not a Google Cloud partner, but our tooling that we have through our distributor, it is compatible with Google Cloud. So what's great about that is a lot of these right sizings and the cost findings, the tooling that we get through our distributor works on all three cloud providers. So regardless of what cloud you're on, or if you're on all three, it'll encompass all of them simultaneously. And that's another huge win I didn't talk about earlier. So right sizing your entire infrastructure, if you are a multi-cloud kind of enterprise or organization, it will help you with all those scenarios. So the big three. We've had a couple clients ask about Oracle. Unfortunately, our distributor with the number of tools that they do have that they've given us access to, Oracle Cloud is not one that anybody seems to be getting too engaged with in terms of these cost tools. So sorry to say that's not one we can help with, but give us a shout if you're using Oracle as well, because the more ammo we have to go back to our distributor, maybe they'll take that suggestion a little more to heart and build that in.
And one of the things you mentioned earlier was about, um, kind of this concept of like almost like buying in bulk, things like that. So does that discount coverage still apply for Google if someone's on Google Cloud? Since we don't have that partnership, would we still be able to get that kind of like discounted partner level pricing?
Yes, that still works. So even though we technically are not a direct partner with Google Cloud, our distributor is a partner with Google Cloud, and that's how some of that magic all works. So it doesn't matter which cloud provider of those big three you might be part of. Our cost savings and the commitments, whether it's the reserved instances or savings plans, those types of things will work for all three primary cloud providers.
Got it. Okay, someone else is coming in here. We're on the Azure government platform. Do you have all the levers you explained earlier for Gov? Okay, so if someone's in Azure government, does AWS have a government cloud too?
They do,
Okay,
yes. And I'm more familiar with that one. So I might spin this answer a bit more towards AWS. I think for the Azure government cloud, that's one where I might need to lean on our distributor a little bit more for some advice there. But I know for sure the for the AWS GovCloud, our tool, you can install it directly into that environment as a standalone thing rather than a SaaS solution. So what's great about that is it does meet FedRAMP compliance. So we can provide you the tool you can install there yourself. So it's air gapped from the rest of the outside, and it's just looking internally at your GovCloud space and reporting those results back to you from within your cloud. So it's never leaving that cloud premise. So that's great in that it works anywhere. A lot of other tools don't do that. Um, but what's nice about that is it's a different enablement that a lot of GovCloud users don't usually see. The one downside though is this is one where, like I was saying earlier, 9 times out of 10, us saving you money is going to be free. This is one of those times where there would be a charge associated with that tool being installed in there because we have to buy a special different license for that standalone instance. So that's something we can talk with anybody who might be interested, but it can, does, and will work very well in the GovCloud space. It also works regardless of GovCloud or not, but our tool also works with any clients who might have a private pricing agreement with their cloud provider. A lot of other savings plans don't work as long as you've got the private pricing agreement in effect or enterprise discount pricing. Those two types of plans usually prohibit some of these automated savings things to function, but ours is a little different in that nature. Just the manner in which we install the reserved instances and the manner in which we procure them from our distributor. So that's another huge win. So anybody who might be under a PPA or an EDP, if you've talked to anybody before about this, they probably told you no. Come talk to us. We're going to tell you yes. It's going to work.
cool. And just kind of speaking of government cloud, I think we were talking about a case study of sketches, a cloud savings case study where the client might have been using something like that. Was GovCloud involved in that? I know we probably can't say the name of this client in a public broadcast, but
Yeah. Yeah. So sorry, what's the question? So
were they
have
on
we used
government
this?
cloud?
Yes, correct.
Okay,
Yeah. So we've done work with a number of clients who've been in the GovCloud space, mainly from software development standpoints, but we've had at least one client, if not two, where the main focus was cost optimization. And I know you love to tell the story about how we're saving them $2 million just through the efforts that we went through. It was only like a 3 month long engagement where we went in with a fine tooth comb, found some things that weren't provisioned correctly. One key thing, and thinking real fast if I'm allowed to say this. This should be fine. Um, be mindful of the SQL Server licensings that you might be purchasing for your cloud environments. That's another spot where you can save tons of money. SQL Server licensing is free for development environments, but they had stuff created in such a way that they were using the plain vanilla, just push the button, launch the server, let it go, which by default, they ended up paying for enterprise licensing on the SQL Server. So that was a huge savings for this particular client. So just, yeah, be mindful of what's a development environment versus what's not. So things like that. That's where having somebody as mindful as Sketch is for some of these things to be on the lookout for, where we can probably find you a lot more savings than you might otherwise think to look for yourself. But we've got experience in the GovCloud space, in FedRAMP compliant spaces. So we'd be happy to have those talks with anybody that's trying to save money there too.
Cool. Yeah, and I know that client that we're talking about now is one where if there was any kind of like a security issue or even a performance issue, it is very much the kind of thing that we would be reading about in the Wall Street Journal.
Yep, very true. Yeah. I mean, that's part of why people use GovCloud for the extra sense of security. Not just sense of security, like it actually is more secure. So it's tough to do some of the things you want to do, but the tooling that we have is geared towards working in the GovCloud environment. So it's not an issue for us to go in there and give you a pretty good assessment and find areas for cost optimization for you.
Great. Well, I think we did it. Is there anything else that you want to talk about before we get out of here?
No, I'm excited to be chatting with any of you watching this that might see a need for some cost optimization within your environment. So just find us on the website and hope to see you soon.